On today's episode, we're discussing debt. Is it good or is it evil?
We're here to talk about bread, lettuce, cheese, dead presidents, green.
It's just money, man. It's just money.
Hi, welcome to It's Just Money. You've got your doctor,
Dr. Matt Anderson, PhD in psychology.
your creative,
Raul Contreras, filmmaker and designer.
and I'm Jared Stafis, an entrepreneur with a master's in personal finance. Ultimately, this podcast is about people and their relationship with money. Today's episode, we are discussing, is debt possibly moral?
$2,858 of student debt is acquired every second.
I'm sorry, you just have to say that again. Did you say second?
Every second. It just
I-
passed again. Another 2,850. Oh, another 2,800.
I can't say it
What?
fast enough. You got to say twice as much just to finish the sentence.
Right.
$5,220. That's insane.
That is insane. Hey, did you guys ever sign up for student debt in college?
Yes.
They
Only-
make it way too easy. No wonder that happens
Right.
so much. Holy cow.
I have friends who actually have signed up and didn't know they signed up. Like they just had it and they're like, I didn't even know.
That's crazy.
The part that they pitch you with is, we'll help pay your apartment,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
you can buy groceries, you can just fund your life while you're going to school.
You can focus on school and not work.
Right.
But then you're going to pay us back later.
Mhm.
I'm still just baffled by
What-
that stat.
What's
by
the
way.
total number of student loan debt are we at?
Student loan debt? Isn't it like 1.5
total-
trillion?
1.4 trillion. Thanks
Mhm.
for asking.
Tried to steal your thunder.
The total
1.4
US
trillion, 2,528, 1.2 million, 5 million, whatever. I can't even say the numbers. Those are so
So-
big.
But
Right.
on top of that, the total U.S. consumer debt is 11.4 trillion.
That's crazy. That
That's
means
good.
like a tenth of our
Half-
total debt is student loans.
Right. 10
Right.
trillion of that is just Netflix. I'm just kidding.
That 1.3 trillion of it is auto loan debt.
Oh.
And then credit card revolving debt was 444 billion.
Well, and the revolving,
Revolving
the
debt.
debt that stays.
Right.
every- at the
That
end of
people
the
are
month.
actually paying interest
'Cause
on.
it's like almost $1 trillion otherwise.
Right.
But then they pay it off.
Yeah, the
So-
interest part is where they get you. It's not so much the debt, I suppose, that I hate, but it's the interest added on top of that debt.
Matt, I know you have a little bit more of research into this.
So debt has a long history, right? People have been debt and charging interest for a long time, but there's been a lot of kind of, particularly in the religious realm, questions about the moral attributes of debt. And so in the Torah, it talks about that the Israelites aren't supposed to charge a fellow Israelite usury, is the term. Usury can be interpreted meaning, so when someone was struggling financially and they needed help, if you had money, you offered them help, that's usury if you then charge them interest. And so some people and some different religions, and one example is medieval Christianity, interpreted more broadly that any sort of debt in which you can't charge interest to another Christian. It's actually the Jewish communities, ironically enough, ended up being the money lenders because they couldn't borrow money from each other. The Christians couldn't. But in the Torah, it's usually interpreted or has been interpreted also that usury is distinct from, like, say, business debt or investing debt.
I borrow so I can then use the money to make money.
Right. So that's okay to charge interest on because they're trying to make money off of it. And so you're taking a risk on by giving them your money because you may lose it.
When we say is debt good or evil, I was going to say, well, debt, like, is owning debt good or evil? Like, can I loan money, or is having debt evil? If having debt is evil, does that automatically make it evil to loan people money? But you've already started to create that distinction that I was going to kind of divide is there's kind of business and business debt, and there's debt as an asset class.
Mhm.
If Apple wants to build $1 billion plant, we're not all going to loan them money and then not expect them to pay us interest when they're going to build a plant to then make billions more dollars. I mean, of course, we're going to look to make money. So that's a form of an asset class. So you have debt you've loaned out, and it's for business purposes. So that makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense to me.
Mhm.
Versus, your neighbor is struggling and
Right.
you loan them $10 to buy gas to get to work so they can keep their job.
Right. So when, we hear about debt a lot. I mean, I think about it, especially for us, we're all millennials. So we're coming of age during the Great Recession. And so debt was kind of a big problem, and we are the ones who most of that $1 trillion is on our generation.
We owe the money. For
We
the
owe the
student
money.
loans.
Yeah, we
I
owe
wouldn't
the
say-
money.
Yeah, with our well, and we were born into massive amounts of government debt.
Right.
Like we don't know anything but debt.
Oh, so
Mhm.
this 11.4 trillion includes government debt.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, this is
government
just
has
like-
government has $21 trillion worth of its own debt.
What?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, we've been adding it on at astronomical pace.
And we've
Yeah.
been funding them with our taxes, so we get interest, right?
No,
We're paying the
well,
interest.
We're paying the interest
Our
for the
taxes
government
paid-
debt as
yeah,
well as our
absolutely.
own debt.
Our,
So
yes.
we really have $32 trillion in
that's
debt.
a better way of looking.
Yeah, exactly. For 350 million.
Holy!
No, I mean it's insane. So at lunch today, though, we're running through, and so I'm doing the math, and we quickly found how much was in total, which was like the 1.5 trillion. That's how I kind of knew that number. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna just do the math real quick per person. And we had the $4 trillion in consumer debt, which is separate from everything else. And I put in my calculator. I kept going, something's wrong. I keep getting $50. And I'd made a joke about like, I'm not even sure I know how to put $4 trillion into a calculator. And then like we spent all this time trying to figure it out. And then finally we realized I was missing 3 zeros because I had actually never put $1 trillion in a calculator. So I put 400,
billion. Yeah.
Wow.
and I was just like,
Missed the
oh,
three
I
zeros.
need more zeros to try to fathom how much we have in debt at 33 trillion. Like, is it even something we can figure out? But does that make America evil? I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about good, evil, bad. Is it a moral thing?
Mhm.
How do we even as the generation who is inheriting this situation, how do we even process it?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the first question, when is debt evil? And like, what is it? We'd have to come up with a clear example that we could all agree on that signifies. So it's okay, that type of debt is evil.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that we're flirting with the line. When you take that number and you like, so what do they say? Not counting government, which I really appreciate that you actually said. So really we have 32 trillion because we're all paying interest on this and it's ours. That's absolutely true. I know that when speaking with financial professionals, a lot of them I've heard say the number one American problem is that our interest payments on our debt alone are going to exceed what we're capable of paying soon. And people just don't get that. So I know that's like a real big issue, even amongst financial professionals debating it. At what point is this just become servitude? We're starting to flirt with on an average per family. There's like 79 million families in the United States. We're talking $150,000 per family in debt here.
That was just the consumer debt. That didn't count government debt.
Yeah, and that's
So
where
it's
I've actually. So
triple
I was
that.
like, having all this thought process, is it evil? And I'm like, we're starting to flirt with this line where we're all servants to our debt. I
Right.
had not factored in apparently the other 2/3 of our debt because I was just thinking about the 11.4 trillion. We really have $33-ish trillion in
That's
debt,
insane.
and we're adding
Insane.
obviously by the second
Like-
ridiculous numbers.
When you think about that, though, like good and evil, like there's got to be some kind of arrogance to what are just the country itself, and the fact that you have so much spending and you've gotten that far in debt, where you just assume everything's fine or somebody's gonna take care of it, or like there's some kind of ego or arrogance involved that has to make it a little bit bad. To
Well,
where
people are
it's
kicking
like,
the can. I don't even think it's ego. It's a lack of caring about future generations. But we
Mhm.
are going into a new era actually where they're debating, and I don't understand this debate, so we definitely can't have it probably amongst us. But I've started to hear this debate, and actually I think we have some presidential campaign people running right now on the belief that we'll just borrow more, like that this is okay. But I think it's because all they've known is debt. But they literally just we'll just print more.
But
We'll
yeah.
print more money.
This is my point though. Like, what kind of value does money actually have if we're just spending all this money with no intention to pay it back? Like, what?
Yeah, I have the same question.
Yeah,
And
no, it's crazy.
I actually find myself very upset with previous generations because I do feel like we have been, this is what we have been given, not what we have created.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, it's money kind of system that we inherited, but that we can fairly clearly see the inherent flaws in it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just how the money system works, but it's like, how did we get to 1.5 trillion? I mean, the government or nobody put a gun to our generation's head to tell them to get college debt. No, they encouraged us to say, hey, this is the way to get out, to succeed in life, to
Yeah.
get a good job and all this stuff. And
But of all of our debt, that for me, that's a lot better than credit card debt.
right.
It's a lot better than car loans. I mean, like
Mhm.
as a society,
Or even government debt.
yeah, or even government debt. No, but and it gets tricky with governments too. But as a society, I mean, I don't know. How do you guys feel about this? Are you happy that we're educated? Do you feel like we're overeducated?
What are you
I
looking
mean,
at me for?
Depends on who you
Oh, I know
ask.
you're overeducated.
Yeah.
100%. But how do you feel about 1.5 trillion? And I'm just okay with it. I feel like people have it now. I mean,
I think there's a lot of things
Some
you
of
can
it's
learn
dumb, but-
outside of college.
Right.
oh,
But
totally.
it's just the degree, the writing on, like the written statement that you have a degree in whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's a problem. It goes back to what you said, almost to the extent that it makes it evil. How easy they gave you the money, but I don't know. It is safe to say that it does feel like people have been tricked into student debt.
Mhm.
Right. Because
That aspect of it feels
I think,
very wrong.
to me, it feels like a misuse. It was based on misuse of data. So there's just like statistics. People like throw, even me, like in our podcast, I throw around statistics. But statistics are really dangerous because you take a statistic that was in a certain place in a certain time, say, okay, people who get a 4-year degree, they earn this much more. They're more likely than people with a high school degree to earn this much and to get these types of jobs. And so then, the obvious solution is that more people were able to get 4-year degrees, then they'll get those same results. But that there's a fundamental logical flaw there, because once there's more people doing that same thing, the value of that goes down.
Mm.
And then there's the kind of a market effect of when you give a lot of easy money, because the reason why we're all able to get money so easily, banks actually stopped giving student loans in 2008.
Yeah.
So the government did.
The government actually made it illegal.
Illegal. They can't do it.
It just recently, I think they changed some of the rules around all that. last
And
couple years.
so it's easy money. So when easy money comes in, well, then that inflates asset prices, but the only assets are these colleges. And so that's why you get new gyms and all this fancy stuff, because the money's got to go somewhere. And so, I mean, the debt really wasn't for the education.
And I might be out of line here because I didn't really. I mean, I went to college, but I went to community college, and that's just what
Well, that's
I wanted
just
to
smart.
do
Smart.
because
That's what I did.
I honestly didn't want
Right.
to spend a lot of money going to learn filmmaking, something that I was already learning
Yeah.
Right.
on my own since I was
I did
14.
the same thing. 44 hours from community college. Heck yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know if I'm out of line saying this though, but I think there's also an inherent problem with, the colleges becoming their own brands in a way and trying to sell their own value at different prices, whether the education is better or not.
So I it's one thing I've appreciated about some recent legal action is they've actually been enforcing more transparency around that.
Mm.
And so they've kind of said like, hey, you can have your own brand, you can charge your own rates, but you need to publish real life up-to-date stats.
Mm.
So that's been a much bigger thing. You can jump on the internet now and say, if I get a 4-year degree in nursing from Harvard versus a 4-year degree from KU, how much money am I expected to make? What's the how likely am I to get hired? And you can actually compare these more to apples on the internet now. So people really need to empower themselves. Like people are more empowered today than ever on that issue. And that was some I believe laws that were recently passed. And they just said, hey, we need more transparency here. Hey, you've got money questions. We've got money answers. It's Just Money Live is coming up. Check out our Facebook page for details. Make sure you don't miss your opportunity to participate. All right, we'll see you then.
Yeah, that's kind of tying us back around to the original, the topic of, is debt good or evil? Thinking of what our truly immoral sense of how to use debt. It's kind of universal that we all think slavery is wrong, right?
So at what point is this debt the equivalent of servitude or slavery because you have no say? Well, they can garnish your wages. They take the money straight out of your accounts. Now you can't afford your bills. It can force you into a complete controlled scenario.
Comparing debt to slavery, trying to think of when is debt inherently immoral, like using that. Or another example would be like we think of debt sharks, like right.
Oh, like the not debt sharks, shark lenders.
Um,
Again.
Loan sharks.
Loan sharks.
Thank you.
Yes.
High five. All right.
Loan sharks, right? We all, I think, can agree that loan sharks are an immoral use of debt, right? It's using debt as a leverage to control people.
Yeah. And that's where payday loans got in a lot of trouble, stuff like that.
Right.
I might actually be the name of a company. I was just going for those types of companies. They have a lot of names, but they got in trouble for basically being illegal loan sharks, where they were charging interest rates that were deemed by the government to be so high that they were immoral.
Oh.
And they were penalized and forced to change the way they do things.
Because that, it
'Cause they serve-
perpetuates
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's servitude.
Right,
Absolutely. And so there are actually good reasons for places like those to exist. I mean, like they can serve a purpose for people who like literally need a 3-day loan to make a car repair to make it to their job, and then everything's fine. They just pay it off. But those places were where it may have started potentially okay, even though they were charging really high interest rates. Well, they're
Right.
really risky loans for 3 days.
Right.
But they were actually creating scenarios and making it easy for people, and then like entrapping them,
Right.
so that they couldn't get out, and that they were. That's where obviously it took a turn. We've established we have a lot of debt
Yes.
as a nation.
Mhm.
We have a lot of debt as a society. We have a crazy amount of debt combined.
Mhm.
Are we now flirting with this thing that we have now? We've almost, I think, you actually agreed to, like, when debt starts transitioning from debt to servitude, that it's starting to flirt with immoral. I mean, are we agreeing with that kind of definition?
Because I don't know.
I don't know either.
Mhm.
But if I mean, I feel safe to say that I feel like if I did that to somebody, if I came to somebody and I loaned them more money than I knew they could, or at a rate that I knew they never could, and it was almost with the intention of either not caring about them or wanting to control them, I'm flirting with them.
The crazy part is like the amount of taxes that corporations don't have to pay. But like our debt number would be lower, right, if companies paid their proper taxes.
I mean, it's a highly debatable topic because a lot of people think that a lot of that money went overseas because our corporate rates were actually way higher than the rest of the world's. And so we encouraged basically that money to go overseas, and then we didn't get any taxes. So everybody else, I think Europe was doing, it was like 20.
Yeah, in the 20s, and then Ireland, where Apple has its
12?
headquarters, is 13.
13, yeah.
So I guess talking about the morality of debt, there's got to be a sense of irresponsible spending to have 32 trillion.
And I kind of struggle with not looking at the baby boomer generation and looking at them through that lens and being like, you bunch of jerks.
Oh, I do. I mean, to be fair, I guess maybe the fair way to say it's like the boomer politicians. Not all boomers are responsible for, but they're voters. So I guess we're a representative republic. So
It's hard.
It is hard. I mean, I think that's one of the challenges as our generation continues to come into power, is like that's what we'll have to deal with, let alone any sort of geopolitical stuff going on. But how to restructure the system so that we can leave something better for our kids. That's on the big macro scale. What about an individual scale? Is there in times when it's immoral to have debt?
I think in the same way that I feel about the lens that Raul kind of described and I applied to baby boomers is the same way I could feel about personal debt. You borrow for student loans trying to further yourself. It doesn't work out. You're in debt. Are you evil? No. But people borrow money all the time for bad purposes too.
Just goes back to the irresponsible.
Yeah, I think that is. I think that's where you start introducing it.
Because the flip side is, investing in your life to become better or improve some aspect of it. Going to the college example, like I definitely knew of some people my age who went to 4-year colleges and blew that money on like partying and having fun. Their student loan, and then they end up dropping out of college.
Yeah, they don't even get the degree.
Yeah.
They just had 4 years of
They
fun.
spent it irresponsibly. And
To the extent that it's,
Oh, I remember my first year
they pay the consequences.
in college. there's always parking lots outside the dorms. And if you came, just a little bit late, you'd have to park out by the cows is what we said, because it was next to a cow pasture. Second semester, I could park almost next to the door because so many people had dropped out
Oh, wow.
and partied out. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa. And most of that was funded through debt.
So I guess the question is then that we're answering, and we're kind of getting there's that debt is not inherently good or evil.
So what about the opposite? When is debt good? Whether a moral good or just a wise good. When is there a situation where it's wise to get
I
debt?
think we already stated a little bit about the investing part, buying a home, buying a vehicle.
But in theory, right,
Um,
like those would both be better without debt.
Well,
in
true.
theory. A good time to get debt would be I have medical bills, I need to pay them. There's just some things, even if you have 2 or 3 months worth of emergency funds, it's nice to have a home equity line or something that you can borrow from to cover that extra. I mean, it would be inappropriate to have enough money in your checking account to cover anything that could possibly happen to you. And so those are great times for debt.
Mm-hmm.
And I may not need help. I may have it, but it's going to take me a while to move things around. So debt is a fantastic transition. Good. I mean, investing in your company, if you have to borrow money to retool a manufacturing plant, seems like a really great thing to do for your workers who will be out of a job if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's lots of great purposes. I think that the meaning behind the debt is probably the deciding factor here.
Yeah, and for me, I really like real estate, encourage investing. I'm getting started on that kind of stuff. So, real estate investing, there's kind of a sense in that community that debt is good, because debt allows you, and used in the right, if you have the right deal, buying the right properties, and then the properties are cash flowing, as in they're making money for you on top of your debt payments. What you're doing is taking some other person's money and then making money off of it and owning an asset or property that's actually making money. So
and paying them profits.
So in that sense, debt is good because it's actually making me money that I'm not actually having to work for. I mean, I did a lot of work to set it up. Once it's going, it's being managed.
And there are people who want to rent who are in a position to not own, whether it's transit.
Yeah, housing is a big
or
deal.
Not wanting, so you're providing a service people need. You're providing somebody else the opportunity to actually have debt as an asset class. So somebody's happy to loan you that.
Right, because they're making money.
Somebody's happy to rent from you. So no, I mean,
it's a win-win-win.
Great example of
kind of on our earlier discussion about credit cards, or not credit cards, about debt getting people stuck in these cycles and servitude and that being bad. That thought came to mind. It's like, well, under that definition, could credit card companies be immoral? Because, there's the option, like for my family, we pay off our credit cards balance every month. So we never pay, we're not stuck in that cycle of high interest. There's a lot, $444 billion worth of that debt out there. It's like, is that immoral debt? I don't know. I mean,
I never used to think of that as a small number until our 1.5 trillion student
or
loans.
32
now
trillion.
I'm like, how could that possibly be immoral? It's only 440 billion. When did I become that guy?
That's how quickly that
it's
happens.
so bad on the other side. That now seems okay. Obviously, I don't think it's an issue, but the tactics, the marketing tactics, right? Don't have to make any payment for 12 months. While we let you build up a balance that we know you can't pay off. And so we mathematically know that we're going to make money on you when you struggle. That's where I think that becomes a problem. But inherently, credit card is actually fantastic for really short-term loans, like I described earlier, if you don't have a home equity line.
Yeah.
Right.
But the companies themselves, like once Apple starts getting into the credit card business, something's up. They're competing for your money in debt.
They got made fun of, actually. If you jumped on like the Reddit forums and stuff, their terms were actually really bad.
Are they really?
Consumer. Yeah.
So I mean, like when a company who has no involvement in credit lines, like
they didn't really do it. Goldman Sachs did it. It's just under the Apple brand. I mean, like Goldman
point
Sachs
still stands.
Yeah,
The
you're
point
taking
still
responsibility
stands.
for it.
Everybody wants in on that money.
So yeah, exactly. So I mean, at that point, they're just fighting for our debt.
I'd also say they're kind of late to the party. I mean, there's already so many other those companies doing it. So obviously we're not singling them out, but all
they're
of
making
them,
it the easiest. Fingerprint, You just press your
Yeah,
fingerprint,
you
your
could already
Apple
do all
ID,
that with Samsungs and
You
Android
just
before Apple.
scan your phone. Yeah, but
Apple's
has
just been the most successful.
because of their brand. So the fact that they're using their brand in that kind of leverage says something immoral to me.
Could be. I struggle. I respect the way they did it as far as the ease. I have it for very simplistic purposes. I don't use it hardly at all, but it's really
Do you have
nice
the
when I-
credit card or do you use
No, I
Apple
actually just
Pay?
use Apple Pay.
Well,
I
see,
get-
Apple Pay is different.
Right.
No,
Because
I
that could
have
be
the
any
credit card. You don't have to get the card. So you can just get the digital card and never get I don't want the
But
metal
Apple
card.
Pay is not the same as that.
I'm talking about the Apple credit card. So
Okay,
you
so
can
you
get
can
a
have
digital
it.
form of it and
Yeah.
never request. You can actually say, don't send me the card.
So why did you
Because I don't
sign
want
up
the
for
card that apparently gets dirty and you can't clean it. Did you not see any of this stuff?
it? No, I haven't.
Oh, man. Oh, we don't. So the credit card itself, like 3 days after they announced it and start sending it out, they say, by the way, don't store this in leather wallets. It will permanently stain the card.
Oh,
So then there's
jeez.
like special Apple cleaners. They came with all these memes like, here
Oh,
comes the Apple
no.
Card case. So you can take it out of the case
yeah.
and put it in your leather wallet, which all wallets are leather. Oh, man.
That's
Who,
funny.
who did that? They had to make their own
Get Apple
special
Care
metal
on
card.
your card.
Yeah.
Fail.
Apple Care.
Apple Care.
That's so good.
So we're talking about whether debt is good or evil. And from our discussion, the answer is yes, that in certain circumstances, it's evil when it's used to subjugate other people and to control them. And so there's situations historically where that has happened. There's situations now where, we talked a lot about how the debt on the country and on student loans there's a big issue that we're going to have to deal with. And so how that was accrued could be argued whether that was immoral. But debt also can be good because it can all, people can use debt to start businesses, to create housing. People own debt as a way to invest and save for the future. And so the debt has a positive role, but it also has a negative role. And so we need to think through our debt and what debt we're accruing, because that it can either have a negative or a positive effect in our lives. And then maybe that can move on to our
3 things you could do to help prevent debt and or get out of debt if you find yourselves in it. One is you need to evaluate your debt. What is the purpose behind the debt? Should it be there? What are the interest rates? And ultimately, once you sit down and evaluate it and decide, step 2 is really reducing your expenses and increasing those payments toward those creditors and those high interest debt, especially credit cards, and so that can get paid off quicker. And of course, step 3, you'd love to build up a emergency fund and kind of some of that preventative measure you can do so that you don't find yourself having to turn towards these high interest rate debts that want to kind of trap you. But if you find yourself in so much debt and all of these tips don't even begin to help, how would you start? There's great government programs where they have debt counselors who will help kind of talk you through some of this stuff. And they even have debt agencies that will actually help take all of your debt, help create a budget you can actually manage to pay it off reasonably, and they'll actually consolidate it into a single loan. Thank you for listening or watching It's Just Money. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If so, please subscribe so you don't miss out.
Also, leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, please comment below.
But remember, it's just money.
Thanks for sticking around. Here's a clip from our next episode.
Why is it important to budget?
A goal that I weirdly never saw happening, but did once I got married, was buying a home. That was a pretty cool and strange experience. And
Usually makes me think of there's a kind of psychological principle with anxiety, right? So that actually your best performance is with mild amounts of anxiety. If you have too little anxiety, actually, if you're like perfectly calm, you actually don't perform as well on tasks.